"I'm dirty inside," she confessed. And the rancher made a decision that changed everything. Clara had been traveling for hours. The dusty road stretched endlessly, and the sun was slowly beginning to set behind the hills. She could feel the heat from the day still lingering in the air, pressing against her skin, making every movement feel heavier. The small suitcase she carried seemed heavier with every step, not because of the clothes inside, but because of the weight she carried in her heart. She had left behind a life full of mistakes, regrets, and people who had hurt her. But even as she tried to leave it all behind, she could feel it clinging to her like a shadow she could not escape. The ranch appeared suddenly, like an oasis in the middle of the barren land. The wooden fences stretched out like arms welcoming her, and the smell of hay and fresh soil filled her nose, bringing with it a strange sense of calm. She stopped for a moment, taking it all in. The ranch looked simple but alive, with animals moving slowly in the fields and the distant sound of a creek trickling somewhere beyond the hills. Clara had never seen a place like this before, and part of her felt unsure if she belonged. Yet part of her hoped, maybe for the first time in years, that she could find a place to belong. Ethan, the rancher, noticed her almost immediately. He had been standing near the barn, wiping sweat from his forehead with a worn-out cloth. He was a tall man, with strong arms and calloused hands, the kind of hands that spoke of years of hard work. But there was something in his eyes that caught Clara's attention, a calm, steady gaze that seemed to look past her appearance and see something deeper. He watched her hesitate at the gate, the way she adjusted the strap of her suitcase and the tiny flicker of fear in her eyes. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked, his voice deep but gentle. There was no judgment in it, only curiosity. Clara flinched at first, unused to such direct attention, but something in his tone made her lower her defenses a little. I'm looking for work," she said quietly, almost too quietly for herself to hear. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the nervousness she tried so hard to hide. She had learned long ago that people could sense weakness, and she had spent most of her life hiding it. Ethan nodded slowly. "Well, we could use some help. It's not easy work, but it's honest." "You up for that?" Clara hesitated. She had done hard work before, but she wasn't sure if she could face it now. Life had a way of breaking people, and she wasn't certain she could handle more of it. Still, something about the openness in Ethan's face, the lack of judgment in his eyes, made her say yes. I think so," she replied. Ethan smiled faintly and motioned toward the barn. "Come on, then. Let's get you settled." The barn smelled of hay and horses, warm and comforting. Clara ran her fingers along the rough wood as she walked, feeling the texture, grounding herself in the present. Ethan introduced her to a few of the ranch hands, who gave her nods and smiles, simple acknowledgments that made her feel welcome in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Her first day was harder than she expected. The sun was unforgiving as she moved bales of hay, fed the animals, and cleaned the stables. Her muscles ached in ways she had forgotten they could ache, and at times she felt like giving up. But Ethan was always nearby, checking in, offering guidance without criticism. "Take it slow," he said. "Listen to the animals. They'll teach you if you pay attention." Clara found herself noticing things she had never paid attention to before. The gentle nicker of a horse when it was happy, the soft bleating of goats waiting for their feed, the way the wind moved through the tall grass like waves on a green ocean. She had spent so much of her life rushing, hiding, and regretting that she had forgotten the small details that made life beautiful. Here, even in the hard labor, there was a rhythm, a sense of purpose that made her feel alive. By evening, Clara sat on the fence watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky turned shades of orange, pink, and purple, and for the first time in a long time she allowed herself to breathe. The ranch felt safe. It felt like a place where she could rest, if only for a little while. But even in this calm, she could feel the weight of her past pressing against her chest. Memories of mistakes, of words said in anger, of choices she regretted. They came flooding back, uninvited, making her heart ache. Ethan noticed her sitting there, alone, and walked over slowly. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood beside her, watching the sky. There was no rush to fill the silence with words, no need to explain, just the presence of someone steady and reliable. Clara felt a tiny flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. Trust.
Long day? Ethan asked, finally breaking the quiet.
Clara nodded. Yes, but it's different here. I don't know why, but it feels different. That's good, he said simply. Sometimes different is what we need. She wanted to tell him more, to explain why she felt so heavy inside, why she carried the dirt of her past wherever she went. But the words got stuck in her throat. Instead, she nodded and watched as the first stars appeared in the deepening sky. She thought about how this ranch, this place of hard work and quiet moments, might be the first step towards something new, something she had longed for but never believed she deserved. That night, as she lay in the small room Ethan had set up for her, she felt both exhausted and strangely hopeful. The room was simple, with just a bed, a small dresser, and a window that looked out over the fields. But to Clara, it was more than that. It was a space where she could begin to breathe again, a place where the shadows of her past could be held at bay for a little while. Sleep came slowly. Her mind kept replaying old memories, moments she wished she could erase. She whispered to herself in the darkness, maybe I can start over. Maybe this place, maybe I can be more than the mistakes I've made. The words felt fragile, like tiny sparks, but for the first time in a long time they were there. The next morning, Clara woke to the sound of the animals stirring. The sun poured golden light through the window, and she felt the warmth on her face. Today, she decided, she would work harder. She would follow Ethan's guidance, learn the rhythms of the ranch, and try, just try, to find a place where she could be clean, even if only inside herself. As she stepped outside, Ethan was already tending to the horses. He looked at her and gave a small nod. No words were needed, the nod said. Welcome. You can do this. You belong here. And for the first time, Clara believed it might be true. Days passed on the ranch, and Clara slowly found herself settling into the rhythm of life there. Each morning she would wake before sunrise, the sky still dark, and help Ethan feed the animals. She discovered the quiet beauty in routine, the way the soft hay crunched beneath her feet, the way the goats nudged her hand when they wanted their food, the way the horses seemed to sense her careful movements and relaxed in her presence. The work was hard, harder than anything she had done before, but it was honest and grounding. For the first time in years, she felt her mind clearing just a little, as if the ranch's steady pace was helping her untangle the knots of her past. Yet even in this calm, Clara carried her secrets like a heavy stone in her chest. She had told herself she would not speak of them, that nobody needed to know about the mistakes she had made, the people she had hurt, or the choices she regretted. She had long ago learned that people judged and trust was rare. And so even with Ethan's steady presence, she kept her distance in small ways, avoiding eye contact when she felt shame creeping in, answering questions briefly, and retreating to her room when the emotions threatened to overwhelm her. It was on the 5th day, after a particularly long afternoon, that the weight inside her became too much to bear. She had been helping clean the barn, her hands scratched and raw from handling the hay, when a memory slipped in uninvited, a sharp, bitter memory of someone she had hurt deeply, someone whose face haunted her dreams. The guilt rose quickly, like a wave she could not hold back. She dropped the broom with a clatter and stepped outside into the warm, fading light, breathing hard, trying to escape the pain inside her. Ethan, noticing her sudden departure, followed a few moments later. "Clara, are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm, careful. She shook her head, trying to form words but finding only a lump in her throat. She walked a few steps, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun was beginning to sink behind the hills. The sky was streaked with colors, a mix of orange, pink, and purple, but she could not see it clearly. All she saw was the heaviness of her own heart. Finally, in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, she said, I'm dirty inside." Ethan froze, standing a few feet away. He did not move closer, did not interrupt. He waited, giving her the space to continue. Clara's words trembled in the air as she admitted the truth she had carried for so long. She spoke of her mistakes, the poor choices she had made, and the people she had hurt, some unknowingly, some intentionally. Her voice broke several times, and tears slipped down her cheeks, but she did not stop. For the first time, she allowed herself to speak her guilt aloud, to release it into the open air, where the wind could carry some of the burden away. Ethan listened without interruption. He did not offer advice, he did not chastise, and he did not judge. He simply stood there, steady and calm, a silent witness to her confession. Clara had expected anger, disappointment, or at least a disapproving look. She had long assumed that revealing her dirt inside would drive people away. But Ethan remained, and in his presence she felt something unfamiliar: acceptance. When she finally stopped, exhausted from the flood of words, Ethan spoke gently. "Clara, everyone carries dirt inside them. Everyone has made mistakes. What matters is what you do with the dirt now." She looked at him, startled. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Her whole life she had been told that her past defined her, that she would always be judged, and that she would never be worthy of trust or kindness. But here, on this ranch, Ethan's words were different. They carried understanding and a quiet strength that made her feel safe for the first time in years. "What do I do with it?" she asked, her voice small, almost pleading. Ethan smiled faintly. "You let it teach you. You learn from it. You don't let it control you anymore. That's what I do every day, and that's what we all have to do. Life gives us hard lessons, and how we respond makes the difference." Clara nodded, feeling the tiniest flicker of hope. She wanted to believe him, but the fear of failing, of not being able to change, still lingered. "But what if I can't?" she whispered. "Then you keep trying," he said simply, "one step at a time." "No one expects you to fix everything overnight. Just start with the next step, and the one after that." That's how it begins. For the first time, Clara felt that maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. She had been carrying the weight of her guilt alone for so long that the idea of sharing it and still being accepted felt revolutionary. She realized that the ranch was not just a place of work, it was a place of healing, of growth, and perhaps even redemption. Over the next few days, Clara began to open up more. She shared small parts of her story with Ethan as they worked side by side, sorting hay, feeding the animals, repairing fences. She spoke about the loneliness she had felt, the people she had disappointed, and the choices that had haunted her dreams. Each confession was a small relief, a tiny release of the burden she had carried for so long. Ethan listened without interruption, without judgment, offering quiet encouragement when she faltered. The ranch responded to her too. The animals seemed to sense the shift in her, the way she moved with more care, more confidence. The horses nuzzled her shoulder. The goats followed her when she walked through the fields, and even the chickens seemed to respond to her gentle tone. Clara began to see herself reflected in the calm, steady rhythm of the ranch, a person who could be gentle, responsible, and capable of change. One afternoon, while repairing a broken fence at the edge of the property, Clara paused to rest and looked out over the fields. The sun was high, casting a golden glow over the hills, and she realized how far she had come in just a few days. The heaviness in her chest was still there, but it felt lighter, like she had been carrying it in a bag and had finally set it down for a moment. She allowed herself to breathe, to feel, to hope. Ethan joined her silently, handing her a bottle of water. He did not ask her to speak or explain herself. He simply sat beside her, sharing the quiet moment. Clara found comfort in that silence, a reminder that healing did not always need words. It could exist in the presence of someone steady, someone who believed in her, even when she did not believe in herself. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of purple and orange, Clara found herself speaking again, this time with less fear. "I've spent so long thinking I'm beyond hope," she said softly. "Dad, but being here, it feels like maybe I'm not." Ethan nodded. "That's the first step. Recognizing that change is possible. The next steps are the ones that matter." For the first time in years, Clara allowed herself to imagine a life beyond her mistakes. She could see herself learning, growing, and maybe even finding joy again. The ranch had become more than a place to work. It was a sanctuary, a place where the dirt inside her could be acknowledged, understood, and slowly cleansed through patience, effort, and compassion. By the time night fell, Clara was exhausted but at peace. She lay in her small room, thinking about the day, about the confession she had made, and about the words Ethan had spoken. For the first time, she felt a spark of self-forgiveness, a tiny flame that promised that perhaps she could rise above her past. She whispered to herself in the dark, "Maybe I'm not too dirty. Maybe I can be better." Sleep came slowly but peacefully, and Clara dreamed for the first time in a long while. Not of the mistakes she had made, but of the possibilities ahead. She dreamed of the ranch, of the animals, of quiet moments in the sun, and of a future where she could stand tall, free from the shame that had haunted her for years. And when she woke the next morning, she felt lighter, ready to take the next step in a life she was only beginning to imagine. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, painting the fields with soft gold. Clara stepped outside her small room, the air crisp and full of possibility. The ranch had already begun to hum with activity. Horses whinnied softly from the stables, chickens clucked as they scratched in the dirt, and the distant sound of the creek gurgled peacefully. Clara took a deep breath, letting the freshness of the air fill her lungs, and felt a quiet determination settling over her. Today she would push herself a little further. Ethan had been observing her quietly for several days. He had seen the way she had opened up, the small but meaningful ways she had begun to trust herself and the ranch. He noticed the way her hands were steadier when she worked with the animals, how her voice carried a little more confidence, and how she carried herself with a cautious yet growing sense of pride. He realized that Clara was ready for something more, not just work, but responsibility. "Clara," he called as he approached her, a calm smile on his face, "I think you're ready for the next step. I want you to take charge of the North Fields this week. You'll care for the animals there, make sure the fences are in order, and oversee the feed. You'll have help if you need it, but I want you to take the lead." Clara froze for a moment, her heart racing. Responsibility had always felt like a burden in her past, a measure of her failures, and now Ethan was offering it to her willingly. Fear bubbled up inside her. What if she failed? What if she made a mistake and proved herself unworthy? But at the same time, there was a spark of excitement, a feeling she hadn't felt in years. Trust. Someone believed she could do this, and maybe that belief was enough to carry her forward. I can do that," she said quietly, her voice trembling just slightly. Ethan nodded. "I know you can."
And remember, I'm here if you need guidance. But I want you to lead.
Learn from the mistakes you might make and use them to grow. That's the point. The North Fields were a small section of the ranch, yet they demanded attention and care. There were fences to check, animals to feed, and equipment to maintain. Clara walked through the fields slowly at first, examining the fences and checking the water troughs. She called the animals gently, observing their behavior, and adjusting her approach when she noticed a horse seemed nervous or a goat seemed impatient. Each task required focus, patience, and care, and Clara threw herself into it with a determination she hadn't realized she possessed. By midday the sun was high, and Clara's arms and shoulders ached from the labor, but she felt a quiet satisfaction. She had fixed a broken fence post that could have caused the animals to escape and had organized the feed for the week. She even managed to calm a young horse that had been skittish around new people. Each small success felt monumental, proof that she was capable of more than she had ever believed. Ethan watched from a distance, silently approving, though he did not interfere. He knew that the true growth would come from experience, from making decisions, learning from errors and taking ownership of both successes and failures. Clara was learning not just how to manage a ranch, but how to trust herself, how to take responsibility, and how to see value in her own abilities. That evening, after the work was done, Clara sat on a fence post overlooking the fields. The sky was a tapestry of oranges, pinks, and purples, the same way it had been when she first arrived, but now it felt different. Back then she had been weighed down by fear and shame. Now she felt a sense of accomplishment, a quiet pride in the work she had done. She realized that responsibility, once so terrifying, could also be empowering. Ethan joined her, handing her a bottle of water. He sat down beside her, and for a few minutes they watched the sunset in companionable silence. Then he spoke. "You did well today. More than that, you led. That's important. It's not just about doing the tasks. It's about making decisions, taking responsibility, and learning from them. That's what life is, really. And you're learning it well."
Clara felt a lump in her throat.
No one had ever spoken to her like this before. Not with understanding, not with patience, and certainly not with trust. Her entire life had been a series of mistakes and punishments, and now, for the first time, someone was showing her that she could succeed despite her past. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't think I could do this." "You can," Ethan said firmly.
"And you will, as long as you keep trying. That's all anyone can ask of themselves or anyone else."
The days turned into weeks, and Clara's confidence continued to grow. She learned how to plan the workday efficiently, how to anticipate problems before they happened, and how to handle the animals with care and patience. The ranch began to feel less like a place where she was simply surviving. She discovered talents she hadn't known she had, like fixing broken equipment, organizing feed schedules, and even teaching the younger ranch hands some of the skills she was learning. One afternoon, while leading a small group of helpers through the north fields, Clara noticed a broken water trough. Without hesitation, she gathered the materials, explained to the others how to fix it safely, and completed the repair herself. Watching the water flow into the trough again, she felt a surge of pride. This was her work, her decision, her responsibility. She had created a solution where there had been a problem. Ethan, who had been watching from a distance, approached her with a smile.
"See? That's what I mean. You're leading, learning, and making a difference."
That's exactly what this is about. Responsibility doesn't just test you, it transforms you. Clara smiled faintly, feeling a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. She realized that Ethan's trust had given her something far greater than responsibility. It had given her belief in herself, a foundation she could build upon, and the courage to continue moving forward despite the fear that lingered in the shadows of her past. Evenings became her favorite part of the day. After the work was done and the animals were settled, she would sit on the fence posts, watching the sky shift colors as the sun set behind the hills. Sometimes Ethan joined her, sometimes she sat alone, and sometimes the ranch hands would gather around to share stories from the day. Each evening reminded her of the progress she had made, and each night, as she lay in her small room, she reflected on the growth she could see in herself. Clara began to notice subtle changes in her own thinking. Where once she had been consumed by fear and shame, she now found space for hope. She realized that mistakes didn't define her. They were opportunities to learn. Responsibility didn't frighten her anymore. It challenged her to be better. And trust, the kind Ethan had given her, was not something to fear. It was something to embrace, to nurture, and to allow to guide her toward growth. One rainy afternoon, as Clara worked in the barn, she reflected on her journey so far. The rain pattered softly on the roof, creating a soothing rhythm that matched the calm she felt inside. She thought about her past mistakes, about the guilt she had carried, and about the fear that had once kept her small. Now, as she organized feed and guided the animals to shelter, she realized that the dirt she had felt inside her was no longer controlling her. It was still there, a part of her story, but it no longer defined her. Ethan walked in, shaking rainwater from his hat. "The north fields look great today," he said with approval. "The animals are happy, the fences are strong, and the feed is organized." "You've done well, Clara." She looked at him, a small smile forming on her face. "Thank you. I'm learning. Slowly, but I'm learning." "That's all anyone can do," he replied. "And you're doing more than that. You're transforming not just the ranch, but yourself." Clara felt a warmth she could not describe. It was more than pride. It was gratitude, a deep sense of being seen and valued. For years she had felt invisible, like her mistakes made her unworthy of attention or care. But here, on this ranch, her efforts mattered, her growth mattered, and she mattered. As the days turned into weeks, Clara continued to take on more responsibility. She led small projects, guided new helpers, and even suggested improvements to the ranch's routines. Each success built her confidence. Each challenge tested her resolve, and each day brought a new understanding of herself. She began to see the truth in Ethan's words. Responsibility was not a burden. It was a path to transformation. By the end of the month, Clara no longer felt like the frightened, uncertain woman who had arrived at the ranch. She had become a leader in her own right, someone who could face challenges with calm determination, who could make decisions and accept the consequences, and who could trust herself to keep moving forward. The dirt she had felt inside her had not vanished completely, but it had been tempered by growth, effort, and the belief that she could be more than her past mistakes.
Ethan watched her quietly, a faint smile on his face.
His decision to trust her, to give her responsibility, had been the turning point. Clara had risen to the challenge, proving that people could change, that mistakes did not define a person, and that compassion and trust could create profound transformation. And for the first time, Clara truly believed it too. The weeks passed, and Clara began to notice changes in herself that she had never imagined possible. Each morning, as she walked through the fields and breathed in the crisp air, she felt a lightness she hadn't felt in years. The heavy shadow of guilt and shame that had once clung to her like a second skin was still there, but it no longer controlled her. The ranch, the steady rhythm of its daily work, and Ethan's unwavering trust had begun to transform her from the inside out. She was no longer simply surviving. She was growing, learning, and slowly discovering the strength that had always been within her. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight glimmered on the dew-covered grass, Clara found herself leading a group of new ranch hands. They were young, inexperienced, and nervous about the work ahead. Clara noticed the fear in their eyes and remembered how she had once felt the same way when she had arrived at the ranch. She took a deep breath and began to guide them patiently, explaining each task with care. She demonstrated how to feed the animals gently, how to mend fences properly, and how to move around the animals without startling them. The young workers watched her intently, impressed by her confidence and knowledge. Clara realized that she was no longer the timid, uncertain woman who had first stepped onto the ranch. She had become a teacher, a mentor, and a guide. The realization filled her with quiet pride. For so long she had believed she was incapable, unworthy, and weak. Now she could see the evidence of her own growth in the eyes of those she was helping. Ethan observed from a distance, quietly smiling. He knew that Clara's transformation was more than just skill or knowledge. It was the emergence of self-respect and confidence. He had given her responsibility, but she had taken it and made it her own. She had learned to trust herself, to make decisions, and to handle challenges with grace. And in doing so, she had become someone who could inspire others, not through words, but through her actions. The days grew busier, but Clara welcomed the challenges. She began to notice small, personal victories in her daily work. She could repair a fence faster and more efficiently than she had weeks before. She could calm the horses and anticipate their behavior before problems arose. She even began to notice changes in her own demeanor. She laughed more freely, her posture was more relaxed, and she no longer flinched at every small mistake. She was becoming whole again, piece by piece, through the simple, honest work of the ranch. One afternoon, as Clara was helping a young girl named Lily, the daughter of a visiting family, care for the animals, she realized something extraordinary. Lily had been hesitant around the goats and sheep, unsure how to approach them, and Clara instinctively guided her hand, showing her how to be gentle and patient. As Lily smiled and laughed when a goat nudged her playfully, Clara felt a warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in a long time. She realized that by helping others, she was helping herself. By teaching patience, trust, and care, she was reinforcing the lessons she had learned and solidifying her own growth. Evenings on the ranch became a time of reflection. After the animals were fed and the work for the day was complete, Clara would often sit on the fence posts overlooking the fields, watching the sun sink behind the hills. She thought about her journey, the fear and shame she had carried, the confession she had made to Ethan, and the trust he had shown her. She realized that the ranch had become more than just a place to work. It had become a place of healing, of renewal, and of self-discovery. Each day was a lesson, each task a step forward, and each interaction a reminder that she could be more than the mistakes she had once believed defined her. One evening, as the sky turned a deep shade of orange, Clara found herself speaking quietly to Ethan. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she said softly. "I used to think that the mistakes I made would follow me forever. But now, I feel like I'm becoming someone I can be proud of." Ethan nodded, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "You are becoming that person, Clara. The journey isn't over, but you're on the right path. You've worked hard, faced your fears, and embraced responsibility. That's how change happens. Not all at once, but step by step." Clara smiled faintly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. She realized that growth was not about erasing the past. It was about learning from it, accepting it, and using it to build a stronger, wiser self. The dirt she had once felt inside her was no longer a burden, but a reminder of how far she had come. She had learned to see herself through the lens of progress and potential, rather than shame and regret. Her confidence continued to grow, and she began to take on more significant responsibilities around the ranch. She organized work schedules, trained new helpers, and even suggested improvements to the daily routines. The ranch hands began to rely on her guidance, seeking her advice and respecting her decisions. Clara felt a profound sense of belonging, a feeling she had thought was lost to her forever. She realized that being trusted and valued by others was not just a reflection of her abilities, but also a reflection of her worth as a person. Clara's transformation was not just about work or responsibility. It was about connection. She began to form friendships with the ranch hands, sharing meals, stories, and laughter. They began to see her as more than a worker or a mentor. They saw her as someone who had faced challenges, admitted her struggles, and emerged stronger. Clara realized that by opening herself to trust and connection, she had built a community around her, a family of sorts, where support and understanding flowed freely. One day, while checking the fences near the creek, Clara noticed a young horse struggling to navigate a muddy patch. She approached carefully, speaking in gentle tones, and guided the animal safely across. As she did, she felt a sense of accomplishment and calm wash over her. The horse's trust mirrored the trust she had begun to cultivate in herself. She realized that transformation was not a solitary journey. It was intertwined with the lives and experiences of others. By helping the horse, guiding the ranch hands, and working alongside Ethan, she was building a life rooted in trust, compassion, and resilience. Even the simplest moments became meaningful. Feeding the chickens, repairing the barns, or simply watching the sunset over the fields became exercises in mindfulness, grounding Clara in the present moment. She learned to appreciate the small victories, to celebrate progress, and to see the beauty in daily labor. Each day reinforced the lesson she had learned, that growth required patience, courage, and a willingness to face one's fears. By the end of the month, Clara had transformed in ways she had never thought possible. She had become confident, capable, and self-assured. The shame and guilt that had once dominated her life were no longer her defining features. Instead, she carried herself with a quiet strength, a calm determination, and an openness to learning and growth. The ranch had given her more than a job. It had given her a chance to rebuild herself from the inside out. Ethan observed her transformation with quiet pride. His decision to trust Clara, to give her responsibility, and to support her without judgment had been the catalyst for this change. Clara had taken that trust and responsibility and turned it into growth, resilience, and leadership. He knew that she would continue to flourish, not just on the ranch, but in every aspect of her life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, casting long shadows across the fields, Clara stood on a fence post, surveying the land she had come to love. She felt a deep sense of peace, a connection to the earth, the animals, and the people around her. The dirt she had once confessed to was no longer a weight on her soul. It was a part of her story, a testament to her resilience and her capacity to grow. Clara turned to Ethan, who was standing nearby, and smiled. "I never thought I could feel this way," she said softly. "I feel strong. I feel like I belong." Ethan nodded, his expression gentle. "You do belong, Clara. You've earned it, not just through work, but through trust, effort, and courage. You've transformed yourself, and in doing so, you've inspired everyone around you." Clara looked out over the ranch, the animals moving peacefully in the fields, the soft rustle of the wind through the trees, and the fading colors of the sunset. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey she had taken, for the trust she had received, and for the growth she had achieved. For the first time in her life, she felt truly at peace with herself, ready to embrace the future with confidence and hope. And in that moment, Clara understood that transformation was not about erasing the past, but about learning from it, accepting it, and moving forward with courage. The ranch had given her the tools, the guidance, and the support she needed. She had given herself the strength to change. Together, they had built something enduring. A life rooted in trust, compassion, and resilience, where the dirt of the past no longer defined her, but instead became the foundation for a brighter, stronger future. The morning light spilled across the ranch, painting the fields with golden warmth. Clara stood at the edge of the north pastures, watching the animals move about, each following its routine with calm precision. The sun glinted off the fences, casting long shadows across the grass, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of earth, hay, and the life itself. Clara felt a deep sense of belonging here, a connection she had never known before. It was a place where her past did not define her, where her efforts mattered, and where she had finally begun to see herself as someone worthy of trust, respect, and love. Weeks had turned into months since Clara first arrived. She remembered the trembling, uncertain woman she had been, the one who had whispered to Ethan, "I'm dirty inside." She remembered the fear that had gripped her, the shame she had carried, and the doubt that had followed her like a shadow. And now, as she moved confidently among the animals, checking fences, filling water troughs, and guiding new helpers, she realized how far she had come. The dirt she had once felt inside was still a part of her story, but it no longer held power over her. It had become a reminder of her resilience, her courage, and her capacity to change. Clara's days were now filled with purpose and connection. She continued to lead the North Fields, teaching new ranch hands how to care for the animals, maintain the land, and work together as a team. She shared stories of her journey, not the darkest moments, but the lessons she had learned about patience, trust, and self-forgiveness. The workers listened with respect, inspired by her calm confidence and her ability to turn struggles into growth. Clara realized that her experiences, once a source of shame, had become a tool to guide and uplift others. One afternoon, as Clara repaired a fence with the help of a young ranch hand named Sam, she paused to admire the horizon. The sun was beginning to set, casting soft shades of orange and pink across the fields. Sam looked at her, his expression curious. "Clara," he said, "how did you get so confident? You were here just a few months ago, and now you just seem different." Clara smiled gently. "I've learned to trust myself," she said. "I've learned that mistakes don't define us. They teach us. And I've learned that sometimes the people who believe in us, like Ethan, can help us see what we're capable of." Sam nodded thoughtfully, as if absorbing every word. Clara realized that her journey was not just about her own growth. It was about the ripple effect her confidence and self-trust could create. The lessons she had learned, the courage she had discovered, could now inspire others, just as Ethan had inspired her. Ethan, meanwhile, continued to watch Clara's transformation with quiet pride. He had never doubted her potential, but he marveled at the way she had embraced every challenge, every responsibility, and every opportunity to grow. He noticed the way she interacted with the animals, the new helpers, and the ranch hands, always calm, patient, and encouraging. He saw how she had become a leader not by demanding respect, but by earning it through her dedication, compassion, and hard work. One evening, after the work was done and the animals were settled, Clara and Ethan stood together at the edge of the pasture, watching the sky turn from gold to deep purple. The ranch was quiet now, filled only with the soft rustle of leaves and the distant sound of a creek. Clara felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. "I never thought I could feel this way," she said softly. "I used to think I would always be trapped by my mistakes, but now I feel free. I feel like I belong here." Ethan nodded. "You do belong, Clara. You've worked hard, faced your fears, and trusted yourself. That's what makes this transformation real. Not just the work, not just the responsibilities, but the courage to grow and the willingness to change." Clara's smile was soft but confident. She realized that this was more than just a moment of accomplishment. It was a lifetime of lessons coming together. The ranch had become a mirror for her own growth, reflecting back the strength, patience, and wisdom she had always had inside herself, even when she couldn't see it. The following weeks brought new challenges, but Clara faced them with the same calm determination she had cultivated. A sudden storm had damaged part of the fencing, and she organized a small team to repair it efficiently, ensuring the animals were safe. When a young foal became sick, she cared for it patiently, following Ethan's instructions and adding her own insights from experience. Each challenge reinforced her confidence, proving to her that she was capable of handling adversity without fear or doubt. Clara also began to deepen her connections with the other ranch hands. She shared meals, laughter, and stories from her past, not the shameful parts, but the lessons learned and the moments that had shaped her. She discovered the joy of community, of being part of something larger than herself, and realized that belonging was not just about acceptance. It was about contribution, effort, and trust. One day, as she led a group of helpers to the far fields, Clara reflected on how much had changed. The woman who had arrived at the ranch timid and ashamed would scarcely recognize the person she had become. She was confident, capable, and self-assured, with a calm inner strength that came from facing her fears and embracing responsibility. She had learned to see mistakes not as failures, but as opportunities. She had learned that trust, both in herself and in others, could create profound transformation. Even the smallest moments became meaningful to her. Feeding the chickens, repairing barns, or simply watching the sunset over the fields were no longer mundane tasks. They were exercises in mindfulness, gratitude, and presence. Clara had discovered that life's beauty often lay in the simple everyday moments, and that joy could be found in patience, care, and effort. As the months turned into seasons, Clara felt a deep sense of renewal. She had begun to forgive herself for the past she could not change, and she had embraced the possibilities of the future. She no longer defined herself by the mistakes she had made, but by the courage she had shown in facing them, the work she had done to grow, and the trust she had earned from others. She realized that transformation was not about perfection, but about persistence, patience, and self-compassion. Ethan, watching Clara one quiet evening as she guided the animals into the barn, felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. His decision to trust her, to give her responsibility, and to support her without judgment had been the catalyst for her transformation. Clara had taken that trust and responsibility and turned it into growth, confidence, and leadership. She had become someone who could inspire others, not through force or words, but through the strength of her character and the courage of her journey. The ranch had become more than just a workplace. It was a place of renewal, a sanctuary, and a community built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Clara had discovered not only her own strength, but also the power of compassion, patience, and understanding. She had learned that the dirt she had once carried inside her was not a permanent mark, but a part of her story that had shaped her into the person she had become. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of red and gold, Clara stood on a fence post, looking out over the field she had come to love. The animals moved calmly below her. The breeze carried the sweet scent of hay, and the ranch glowed in the soft light of dusk. She felt a deep sense of peace and belonging, a connection to the land, the animals, and the people around her. For the first time, she truly believed in herself, in her worth, and in the possibility of a future filled with hope, growth, and joy. She turned to Ethan, who had joined her quietly. "I feel like I've finally found where I belong," she said softly. Ethan smiled, his expression calm and proud. "You have, Clara. You've earned it. Not just through your work, but through your courage, trust, and perseverance. You've transformed yourself. And in doing so, you've created a life that is meaningful, strong, and full of hope. Clara felt a warmth in her chest that was almost overwhelming. She realized that the journey she had taken, from fear and shame to trust and confidence, was not just a story of personal growth, but a testament to the power of compassion, belief, and patience. She had learned that people could change, that mistakes did not define them, and that trust and support could unlock the strength hidden within. As night fell over the ranch, Clara walked among the animals, ensuring they were safe and comfortable. She paused for a moment to look at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. A sense of gratitude washed over her, not just for the ranch and the work she had done, but for the lessons she had learned and the person she had become. She realized that her past, once a source of shame, had become the foundation for a brighter, stronger future. And as she stood there, the cool breeze on her face and the soft sounds of the ranch all around her, Clara understood the truth of her journey. That the dirt she had once carried inside her had not destroyed her, but had shaped her into someone capable of resilience, growth, and joy. She had faced her fears, embraced responsibility, and learned to trust herself and others. And in doing so, she had created a life filled with hope, peace, and belonging. A life she had once thought impossible, but now knew was hers to live. For the first time in years, Clara felt complete. Not because she was perfect, but because she had discovered the strength, courage, and resilience that had always been inside her. The ranch had been more than a place of work. It had been a place of transformation, healing, and renewal. And as she walked back to her small room, the stars shining brightly above, Clara knew that she was finally free to live fully, boldly, and with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced their past and emerged stronger than ever.